There are many forms of media. We describe books and newspaper as media. We think about radio and television as electronic media. And we classify the various social media platforms as digital media. All media have particular properties, therefore different affordances. These lend them to different uses. A primary use of these types of media is as a means of communication. This is true for print, for radio, for television, and especially for social media. An important theorist in media was Marshall Mcluhan. He was active in the 1960s and 70s. Mcluhan used the term media in a broad way, not only to encompass physical manifestation, like books and radios, but to understand media beyond the materiality of these items. His major intellectual contribution was to talk about media as being extensions of human capabilities. He likened writing as a method of extending memory, of the telephone as extending in-person conversation. But Mcluhan was also talking about media very broadly, to include almost any technology. He would describe today's internet as media, for example. To him, all technologies extended human capabilities. Cranes lifted, cars transported, microphones heard, and eyeglasses saw. In the language of affordances, these tools afforded extended capabilities beyond what we could achieve without them. One of Mcluhan's arguments is that media do not only transmit information, but are themselves information. Their use signifies meaning. He had this interesting phrase, "The medium is the message," by which he meant the message of any medium or technology is the change of scale or pace or patterns that it introduces to human affairs. That is, the affordances of the technologies we use say something about our motivations and priorities, and the affordances of the tools we use have the potential to shape us just as much as we might take advantage of them. Focus on technologies as media draws our attention to the characteristics of the materials from which they are made, their materiality. Affordances arise because of the form of an object or the form of the properties of its materials. To continue the example of how a tree trunk affords boat building, it is both the size of the trunk that makes it suitable to become a canoe, and the properties of the wood as being buoyant and pliable. Materiality is concerned with the properties of matter, as opposed to form. Around 100 years ago, an art and design movement based at the Bauhaus School placed particular emphasis on materials and the ways of working sympathetically and transparently with them in art and design projects. This led to the featuring of particular materials in the search for elegant matching of function and material, and a search for new uses of natural and industrial materials. Almost a century later, we continue to focus on materiality because material knowledge is often underestimated when it comes to interactive experiences. Today, we typically use digital and electronic materials in a project, and to do this well, we need to be aware of the affordances and limits of digital and electronic technologies. In digital systems, things are not only made of materials like silicon, metal, glass, and so on. They may also represent virtual materials through simulation or models that may strive to reflect the materiality of those particular materials. For example, a digital drawing program may try to simulate various types of drawing tools, and in virtual reality systems we may depict objects and want them to behave in realistic ways. Janet Murray has written a book about affordances of digital media. Particularly in her 2012 book, Inventing the Medium, Principles of Interaction Design as a Cultural Practice, she outlines some affordances for digital media. First, she says, the computer is a procedural medium. It can be automated through software programming. This is a significant difference for digital medium when compared with previous forms of media. This programmability enables the computer to process data, rather than simply hold or transmit information. Automatic operation is also the basis of machine behavior and machine learning. This is why we can describe the computational device as smart or intelligent. The computer is also, she says, a participatory medium. Computer systems can be interactive. As a medium, a computer is not just static like a book. It can be active or reactive because of its programmability. This interactivity is also made possible by sensor hardware, including keyboards, touchscreens, cameras, microphones, motion sensors, and so on. These capabilities afford many unique opportunities for the use unavailable in older media. The computer is also, according to Murray, an encyclopedic medium. Her term encyclopedic conveys a sense of a mass of information, like big data that is now accessible and processable by computing systems. Another way of describing this attribute is to say the computer is scalable. It can get larger and larger and larger, process more and more information. Previous media quickly ran into physical limits when trying to scale. Think of libraries full of books, for example. We can now fit all these books on our device, and when networked we can access them from servers in the cloud. So computers can scale in speed and storage, and internet connections between all of these computers take scalability to new heights. The affordances of this data and networking capability are still being realized, and in a world that is always connected, the opportunities and challenges are still emerging. Murray also states that the computer is a spatial medium. This is a slightly odd term, but refers to the digital media being non-linear. Computers can randomly access data anywhere from their memory or from networks they're connected to. This is in contrast to linear media, like a tape recorder or a book, where information is stored in a single stream of data. In non-linear media, you can jump around anywhere in time and space. The spatial metaphor used by Murray imagines computer storage as a landscape that can be navigated. The implications and affordances of hyperlinked connections around this information landscape are both positive for new insights and relationships, but problematic as we try to cope with increasing distractions and tangents. Finally, recognizing that affordances of digital media, like other affordances, require a matching of objects and users. Murray reminds us that when developing interactive media systems, the designer must script both sides so that the actions of the humans and the machines are meaningful to one another. We must consider and try to manage the behaviours of the media and of the user. When designing affordances in digital media, we are designing a relationship between the behaviours of the user and the behaviours of the device. We want to create and curate those interactions, those relationships between humans and machines. To do that, we need to craft the affordances of the media we create.